What if the needle scratched, the record skipped, and the soundtrack of the 90s took a drastically different turn? We're peeling back the layers of a timeline we thought was set in stone, exploring a possibility that still sparks debate and fuels endless speculation. Prepare to question everything you know about grunge, fame, and the fragile line between genius and despair. Hey Alternatifiers, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're not just revisiting history, we're challenging it. We're staring into the abyss of a pivotal moment and asking the most haunting what if of the 1990s. What if Kurt Cobain had survived? We all know the official story. April 1994, a cultural earthquake. The reluctant voice of a generation silenced forever at 27. His death didn't just end a life, it seemed to punctuate an entire era, slamming the door shut on grunge's explosive reign and leaving a void that music and culture have been grappling with ever since. But what if that door hadn't closed? What if, against all odds, Kurt Cobain had found a different path? This isn't just idle fantasy for music lovers. It's a fascinating historical puzzle, a chance to explore the immense gravitational pull of one individual on the entire cultural cosmos. We're going to dissect the forces at play in 1994, the pressures that built to that tragic point, and then we'll dare to imagine a world where those forces were somehow navigated, where the story continued. We'll look at the potential triumphs, the inevitable struggles, and how a living, evolving Kurt Cobain might have reshaped the very fabric of the late 20th and early 21st centuries. So, for the history buffs who love dissecting turning points, the alt history fans who crave divergent timelines, and yes, even those who see the hidden currents beneath the surface, buckle up. We're about to step into an alternate reality, a world where grunge didn't die but transformed, and where Kurt Cobain got a second, complex and utterly unpredictable act. To truly grasp the magnitude of Kurt's potential survival, we must first understand the intense, almost unbearable pressure cooker that was his life in early 1994. Nirvana wasn't just a band, they were a global phenomenon, unwillingly thrust onto a stage built for pop idols, not punk poets. Nevermind hadn't just sold millions, it had fundamentally altered the music industry landscape, kicking hair metal off the charts and dragging alternative music into the mainstream glare. Kurt, who despised the corporate machine and the concept of celebrity, suddenly found himself the reluctant king of a world he never wanted to rule. He was battling chronic health issues, crippling anxiety, and a spiraling addiction that offered a temporary destructive escape from the relentless scrutiny. The media dissected his every move, his relationship with Courtney Love was tabloid fodder, and the expectation to replicate Nevermind's success weighed heavier than any guitar. The punk ethos that fueled Nirvana was fundamentally at odds with the stadium tours and MTV ubiquity they now commanded. Kurt felt like a sellout, a fraud, trapped by the very success he'd inadvertently created. This internal conflict, amplified by external pressures, created a perfect storm. Many saw the signs, the raw vulnerability laid bare in interviews and performances. The MTV Unplugged session, while iconic, showed a man visibly weary, haunted by the ghosts of his own lyrics. The system that elevated him was also, in many ways, consuming him. Now let's pivot. Just imagine, that at that critical juncture something shifts. Perhaps a moment of clarity, a desperate plea answered, or an intervention that finally breaks through the despair. Instead of the tragic outcome, Kurt makes a different choice or is somehow steered onto another path. Maybe it's a last-minute call to a friend, a moment of connection with Courtney, or perhaps, as some speculative accounts might ponder, a hidden hand or circumstance alters the sequence of events. The point is, the trajectory bends. He doesn't succumb. He enters a rigorous, perhaps involuntary period of treatment and recovery. This isn't a quick fix. It's a brutal, drawn-out battle against addiction and the deep-seated mental health issues exacerbated by fame. It's a private war fought under the shadow of intense public interest. News breaks not of his death, but of his hospitalization, his struggle, his decision to seek help. The world holds its breath. The narrative shifts from tragedy to a fragile, uncertain hope. Nirvana cancels everything, disappearing from the public eye as Kurt embarks on the arduous journey of healing. This moment of survival isn't a magical cure. It's merely the opening of a different, incredibly difficult door. The demons don't vanish, the pressures don't disappear, but the story, the history, continues down an entirely new, uncharted path. With Kurt alive but sidelined, the music world of 1995 reacts with a mixture of relief, uncertainty, and continued momentum. Nirvana is on indefinite hiatus, leaving a massive void at the top. This vacuum allows other bands previously overshadowed to step further into the spotlight. Pearl Jam and Soundgarden solidify their positions, perhaps experimenting more freely without Nirvana's colossal shadow dictating the genre's perceived boundaries. Bands like Alice in Chains continue their darker exploration, while others, like Stone Temple Pilots, might find even greater commercial success in Nirvana's absence from touring. Crucially, Kurt's public struggle with addiction and mental health, now a story of survival rather than tragedy, could have a profound impact. It normalizes the conversation, bringing these issues out of the shadows and into the lyrics and public discourse of other artists. Grunge's angst might find new, more introspective, or even politically charged expressions. The genre itself doesn't die, it diversifies. Without the definitive tragic endpoint, grunge is free to mutate. Perhaps bands blend its raw energy with emerging sounds, the industrial textures of Nine Inch Nails, the burgeoning trip-hop scene, or the more melodic leanings of Britpop, which was gaining traction. Imagine a 1996 where Nirvana, after a quiet period, releases a new album. It's not In Utero Part 2. It's raw, yes, but perhaps infused with the vulnerability of recovery, the introspection of facing one's own mortality and choosing life. It might incorporate unexpected instruments, quieter passages, or lyrical themes focused on healing, struggle, and tentative hope. This album could be divisive. Some fans, clinging to the Nevermind era, might feel alienated. Others, who connected with Kurt's honesty, might embrace this new, more mature sound. Critics would debate its merits endlessly, but its mere existence would keep Nirvana, and by extension grunge, relevant and evolving, preventing its ossification into a purely historical phenomenon. The late 1990s for a living Kurt Cobain would be a tightrope walk. Sobriety is a daily battle, and the pressures of fame haven't vanished, merely changed form. He's no longer just a rock star. He's a symbol of survival, a reluctant icon of recovery. The tabloids, ever hungry, would track his progress, his relapses, his relationship with Courtney, which would undoubtedly remain a tempestuous, complex partnership. Their life together, raising Frances Bean, would be under constant scrutiny, a challenge for any couple, let alone one under a microscope. Musically, Kurt might explore avenues beyond the traditional Nirvana format. Perhaps solo projects, collaborations with artists from vastly different genres, electronic musicians, folk singers, even jazz experimentalists. He might delve deeper into his artistic interests beyond music, like painting or sculpture, using them as therapeutic outlets. His platform, however, would be immense. Having stared into the abyss and returned, his voice on issues like mental health, addiction, and the predatory nature of the music industry would carry significant weight. He could become a powerful, albeit perhaps still reluctant advocate, using his own story to challenge stigma and push for change. Imagine him testifying before Congress on mental health care funding, or funding rehab centers with his considerable wealth. He could lend his name and influence to causes he cared about, from environmentalism to LGBTQ+ rights, injecting a potent, authentic voice into activist movements. Nirvana might continue, but perhaps on their own terms, sporadic tours, experimental albums, prioritizing artistic satisfaction over commercial demands. They might become the velvet underground of their generation, not always chart toppers, but profoundly influential on subsequent waves of musicians. As the new millennium dawns, Kurt Cobain, now in his late 30s and 40s, would occupy a unique space. He wouldn't be a relic of the 90s, but a contemporary artist with a legendary past. His influence would be undeniable, cited by bands across the musical spectrum, from the garage rock revivalists to the burgeoning indie scene. Would he embrace the role of elder statesman, mentoring young bands, sharing his hard-won wisdom about the industry's pitfalls? Or would he retreat further, becoming a reclusive figure, releasing art and music on his own schedule, shunning the spotlight he always detested? Both paths seem plausible, perhaps even alternating throughout the decade. Nirvana's output might become even more experimental, challenging fan expectations and pushing musical boundaries. They could become a band known for reinvention, constantly surprising their audience, much like Radiohead or David Bowie. Their concerts might be rare, highly anticipated events, focusing on deep cuts and new material rather than a greatest hits parade. Kurt's activism could evolve, perhaps focusing on systemic issues within healthcare or the justice system as they relate to addiction and mental illness. He could become a respected, if sometimes controversial, public intellectual, using his experiences to comment on the state of society. His relationship with Courtney and Francis Bean would continue to be a central and likely challenging part of his life. The narrative of their family, navigating fame, recovery, and personal growth, would be a constant evolving story in the public eye, a stark contrast to the frozen-in-time image we have today. In the 2010s and into the present day, Kurt Cobain would be in his 50s. His legacy wouldn't be a fixed point in the past, but a living, breathing, evolving entity. New generations would discover his early work, but they would also have access to decades of subsequent music, art, and public commentary. His influence would be woven into the fabric of contemporary music in ways we can only guess at. Would the dominance of pop and hip-hop in the 2000s and 2010s have been different with a vital, alternative voice like his still active? Would the resurgence of guitar music in certain scenes be more pronounced? He could become a figure of immense respect, a survivor who navigated the treacherous waters of fame and addiction and emerged with his artistic integrity intact. His story would be one of resilience, a powerful counter-narrative to the tragic rock and roll cliché. Imagine him performing at major festivals, not as a nostalgia act, but as a headliner whose new music is as anticipated as his classics. Picture him collaborating with artists like Billie Eilish, Kendrick Lamar, or Phoebe Bridgers, bridging generational and genre divides. His impact on mental health advocacy could be profound, potentially contributing to a more open, compassionate societal approach to these issues. His continued presence could inspire countless individuals struggling with similar demons, offering a tangible example of hope and recovery. His life wouldn't be perfect. There would be continued struggles, public missteps, and the inevitable challenges of aging in the public eye. But it would be a life filled with the messy, unpredictable reality of human experience, rather than a myth frozen in time. It's crucial to acknowledge that this alternate timeline isn't a utopia. Kurt's survival wouldn't erase his problems. It would merely allow him to confront them over a longer, more public timeline. Addiction and mental illness are lifelong battles, often marked by relapses and setbacks. The pressures of fame, while perhaps managed differently, would still be immense. The scrutiny, the lack of privacy, the constant demands, these would continue to take their toll on a sensitive, introverted individual. His relationship with Courtney, famously volatile, would likely remain a source of both strength and conflict. Their dynamic, played out under the public gaze, would be a constant source of tabloid fodder and public speculation. Raising Francis Bean in that environment would present unique and difficult challenges. Artistically, he might face periods of creative block, struggle with the expectations of his audience, or release work that is critically panned or commercially unsuccessful. Not every artistic turn would be a triumph. There would be moments of despair, public struggles with sobriety, perhaps even periods where he retreats entirely from the public eye. The narrative wouldn't be a smooth upward trajectory, but a jagged human path filled with both progress and regression. Understanding these potential struggles is vital. It grounds the speculation in reality and reminds us that survival isn't an ending. It's the continuation of a complex, challenging journey. So, how fundamentally would a living Kurt Cobain have altered our world? The ripples extend far beyond the music industry. Firstly, the soundscape of the late 90s and 2000s would be different. Grunge wouldn't have been neatly packaged as a historical genre. Its continued evolution, influenced by Kurt and Nirvana's ongoing work, would have seeped into the mainstream and alternative scenes in unpredictable ways. Perhaps the rise of nu metal would have been less pronounced, or the indie rock explosion would have taken a different shape. Secondly, the conversation around mental health and addiction would have a powerful, visible champion from the world of rock music for decades. Kurt's continued openness could have significantly contributed to destigmatization, encouraging more people to seek help and influencing public health initiatives. Thirdly, his potential activism could have amplified voices and brought attention to causes that might otherwise have struggled for mainstream visibility. His unique blend of authenticity and fame could have been a potent force for social and political change. Fourthly, the very myth of the rock star would be different. The tragic 27 Club would lack one of its most prominent defining members. Kurt's story would become one of survival and transformation, offering a different kind of narrative about the potential outcomes of artistic struggle and fame. It's impossible to map every single change, every butterfly effect. But it's clear that the absence of his death and the presence of his continued life would have sent countless ripples through culture, music, and societal awareness. The story of Kurt Cobain as we know it is a tragedy, a poignant, frozen moment in time. But by daring to imagine a different outcome, we unlock a narrative of potential for healing, for growth, for continued creation, and for profound influence. This isn't about disrespecting the reality of his life and death, but about exploring the sheer weight of his existence and the myriad possibilities that lay dormant in that pivotal moment in 1994. It's a reminder that history, even recent history, is a complex tapestry woven from individual choices and external forces, and that a single thread pulled differently can change the entire pattern. By speculating on a living Kurt Cobain, we're not just entertaining an alternate history, we're reflecting on the fragility of life, the power of resilience, and the enduring impact one person can have on the world, whether their story ends tragically or continues, messy and unpredictable, into the future. So, Alternatifiers, the floor is yours. How do you think a living Kurt Cobain would have changed the world? What music would he have made? What causes would he have championed? What would his legacy be today? Let's discuss the endless possibilities in the comments below. If this journey into an alternate past sparked your imagination, hit that like button. Subscribe to Alternatify for more deep dives into divergent timelines, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss our next historical speculation. And seriously, tell me what other what-ifs keep you up at night. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next alternate reality.